grass so tame. 100 volts, take your life, ain't no game. I switched them lights up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey DJ, turn them lights up. Yeah.
She got her light switched on, my light switched on. She looking in my eyes like I like this done. I wanna know what side she's from. I see many girls, but I like this one. Told me she was a West Side lady. Had a few friends, but they were all shady. Now she on a solo thing, so the money can't send her crazy. Too many friends, and not enough true friends. Made her wanna go and move to a new end. I hear her though, cause even if my life gets lonely, it's all good to keep two friends. We connected, I asked her out and then she accepted. I think she gets it. When the end of the night comes, me and her leave through the exit.
You can go back. Thanks. Okay, good morning everybody. I think with the door closing, I'll start talking and welcome you all to Tuesday morning and our sort of quite greedily second NEA conference of 2023. Really excited to be in Leicester, really excited to look out and see all of your faces, and yeah, really looking forward to a sort of a busy, vibrant day of discussions and presentations today. My name's Danielle, I'm a Project Development Manager at National Energy Action, and I've got the handy job of sort of keeping everything in order today. So I'll start with a few of the normal housekeeping rules. No planned fire alarms, so if you hear it, please make your way to the back of the room and get out as quickly as possible. Please keep phones on silent, as we would do normally, and try and join sessions promptly. So it's quite a busy day, quite a lot to get through, and we're spread out across this sort of really excellent venue. So yeah, try and just keep an eye on the agenda, which is really helpfully on the back of your lanyards for you to see. Format of the day today, so we're going to get started with a keynote address from our Chief Executive, Adam Scorer, and we welcome the Minister, Amanda Soloway, with us today to address conference. Plenary sessions will then take us up to lunchtime at around 1 o'clock, but we will have a comfort break at 11:15 for you to go out and peruse the exhibitions a bit more and get to chat to some of your colleagues in the room. And during the lunch break, I've been told to remind those of you with a blue lanyard strap, extra special, we would invite you to join our annual general meeting. So should you be in the possession of a blue lanyard, please, you are a voting member, so please can you make your way back here to the main auditorium at around 1:40 p.m. so that we can get the AGM wrapped up as quickly as possible and make sure everybody's had a lunch break and a chance to chat with colleagues. We'll then start the afternoon session with 3 breakout sessions before we reconvene for one final plenary back in here in the afternoon and before our conference dinner, but more details on that later on. I've been told to remind you all about hashtags, so we are tweeting today and we'd welcome your sort of input, thoughts, sharing some of your reflections using the hashtag EnergyCrisisConf. And I'm sure you'll see lots of sort of activity around Twitter if that's what you use. And then the other thing I'm going to ask you to bring your smartphones out for, if Nick could pop one slide across. Thank you. So tomorrow in our session, we're going to hear from Danny Barnes, our Director of Development and Partnerships, who will be providing an overview of some of NEA's current and future priorities, including some of the major programs that we're developing and working on at the moment. And we'd love for you to be aware of some of that work and the potential to get involved. So in that session tomorrow, towards the end of the conference, we want to provide you with an opportunity to give a brief shout out for any of the work that you're doing, any of the relevant initiatives that you would like NEA and others in the room to know about. And the way we're going to capture that is helpfully using the technology, which should work seamlessly, I'm told. So yeah, if you have a smartphone and you're able to scan the QR code or join Slido in the usual way, and there should be full explanation in there of sharing details with us of some of the brilliant projects and initiatives that you're working on. And I think this will hang around on the screen for a little bit longer if you're all fiddling with your phones. So without further ado, I'm going to wrap up and yeah, welcome you all to a really brilliant day. Please do grab one of us. There's lots of NEA bodies around the room if you have any questions or if there's anything you need. But yeah, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our Chief Executive, Adam Scorer, and let the conference commence. Thank you.
This room looked very big and empty earlier on, so it's a delight to see so many people, and that's quite hazardous. That's quite a challenge to be able to do. Anyway, I am Adam Scorer, the Chief Executive. It's fantastic to have so many people here. We have almost a full East Midlands panel. We're in Leicester, we have a Derby MP, and I'm from Nottingham, so this is the full East Midlands experience, and it's not always like that, kind of outside. And the first thing for me, as well as to welcome everybody, is the thanks. So huge thanks to Kane and Ovo for sponsoring it. I have to say they've been very flexible and great partners to have. Without that, these things don't happen. So it's fantastic that we had that sponsorship, and to the exhibitors out there in the exhibition space, again, huge, especially those from our business supporters group, really essential that we have those. Otherwise, again, these things don't happen. So I'd ask you to do your chatting and your mixing and your partnership building in the exhibition space as far as you can. There are lots of new NEA faces here today. It's a consequence of the organisation getting a bit better. So don't just look out for the NEA faces that you know, but kind of pick on the ones that are new as well. So anyway, the conference is at the start of winter. It's the start of winter. It's cold and it's damp and it's a bit miserable, but it's the start. And we all know, everybody in this room knows that when you get to January and February, that's when you really see the challenge that we all face. When it's been going on for a bit, when the grind is on, when people have had to cope with it for a long time. So it's important that we do it now, because we need to get ourselves ready. The great thing about these things is it is a coming together, it's a common purpose, it's a gathering of the clan, it's kind of a way of giving each other support and motivation to go, but we know it's going to get hard. I don't really need to go through the context. Typical energy bills, £800 more than the start of the crisis, energy debt at £2.6 billion, 6.5 million households in the UK in fuel poverty using the needing to spend 10% to keep warm and powered definition. It's a challenging context. Some work that NEA have done over the past few months, so in the autumn, is showing how that represents itself in the coping strategies. So, you know, it's kind of 41% of prepayment meters self-disconnecting in autumn. It's people going to bed very early to avoid heating their homes in autumn, not opening your curtains or covering your windows with newspaper in autumn. And it's more than that. You might think that they're the sort of coping mechanisms that people might want to do. But of course, we know it's more than that. It's 13% of adults using their ovens to heat their homes. It's people not powering their fridge or their medical equipment, fridges which are necessary to keep medical supplies in. It's not using your hot water. It's not cooking hot food. It's not sending your kids with clean clothes. We had some terrible stories only recently about people collecting rainwater in order that they could have a cold weather bath to avoid the cost of a shower, cutting all your hair off to avoid the cost of washing your hair. Crisis, as we always say, crisis is when your coping mechanisms fail you. It's when all you're left with is dread and desperation, and that makes the work that everybody in this room does so vitally important. It's no secret that the Minister knows, because we've said it often enough, that we were wanting greater emergent financial support in the autumn statement, and that we wanted progress on social tariffs and help to repay schemes. I think we all know that, but we also know, it's no secret, that even with that, this was going to be a hard, hard winter. And that's what this conference is about. There's going to be sessions later on the next couple of days with hard, challenging talk about the experience of clients and the experience of frontline staff and frontline organisations, what it means, how it's represented, how it's lived. There's going to be sessions that look at the gaps, where provision isn't quite working, where lots of people are trying to make the provision work, but where there are gaps, in particular marginalised communities, making those health and energy connections actually work. For NEA, what you do for people whose homes got wrecked by energy efficiency done badly, and we say that as energy efficiency evangelists. What there will also be, and I heard enough of it last night, there'll be the ingenuity, the bloody-mindedness, the perseverance, the determination to make positive partnerships work with whatever package we have, with whatever kind of sources of support we can bring together, because that's what this conference does. It's when people come together, you share common purpose, hopefully you raise morale, You give yourself the steel and the grit to keep going all the way through winter. Yes, we'll still call for more stuff. We'll call for more from the suppliers, more from the regulator, more from government, more from health authorities, more from local authorities. We will do all that. But the core of NEA conference this year and every year, no matter what the theme is this is about people with a common purpose and a strength of purpose, coming together knowing that the things we do in partnership and the things we do together last and deliver better than anything else. That is what NEA conference has always been about and always will be about. If I had one aim, one wish for everybody who comes to the conference, is that you'll take one thing or maybe one person away with you from the conversations you have that makes your work better, more impactful, and sets you up to be making an even bigger contribution in the fight against fuel poverty. I hope the Minister finds someone or something around that as well. So without further ado, I am delighted that Amanda Soloway has joined us today. The Energy, Consumer and Affordability, it's a great title. It's a challenging job in the best of times, really challenging now. I think anybody who's observed the Minister knows that she has thrown herself into it, you know, in a very kind of personal, effective way. We think about the interventions on prepayment meters, and I'm absolutely delighted that you could join us today. So, Minister, over to you.
Well, thank you. We were just talking about how we both need new knees. So that was a bit of a challenge as swapping there. And my takeaway today, I have to say, is you, Adam. I'm always inspired when I hear you. I think it's really important that you convene all these people here together. And my apologies, now I've come up this morning from London, and it's really frustrating being just a sort of a stone's throw away from my home in Derby, but it is a great pleasure to be here. But Adam, you are an inspiration, and so are all of your team. So I just thought I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes and just explain to you why I think it's so important. And as you say, my title is so important. So a great pleasure to be here today. And historically, I don't know whether I used to work for Help the Aged, and so saw firsthand what it was like and the need of people in that environment. And then subsequently, I went on to work for Save the Children as well. So it's not unfamiliar to me, the challenges that people are facing today. And I want to thank the work that everybody here at National Energy Action do, because the hard work is absolutely crucial to everything and all the things that we're seeing, certainly in today's situation. And I was thinking about how best to describe the kind of work that we're doing. And Adam, you say a really important thing about the partnership that we're working with, which is around government working with suppliers, working with different organisations. And one of the things that I really do is absolutely reach out and have stakeholder meetings on a very regular basis, which is why, Adam, you and I know each other so well, and while there are many familiar faces here today as well. And I was thinking about somebody, and there was an example given to me about a lady called Irene who lives in the local community. And she was finding it really difficult to heat her house. And in actual fact was quite often very, very cold. And she described it as just having one small radiator. And that doesn't seem right, does it? That a person has to have all of that cold. And it was only when they actually fitted through the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, they were able to fit support, that Irene really felt the benefit and was able to heat her house properly. And it's really important that we think about, when we're talking about heat, when we talk about energy, that we remember, as Adam so eloquently said, that this is about people, and this is about people's lives. So I think, although Irene was lucky to obviously have support, we do need to make sure that we are doing the very, very best we can. Now, Adam, you'll have heard me say, and you said that personally I have experienced having known what it's like. And growing up, and I was just trying to reflect back to what it was like growing up, because you may before have heard me say publicly that my mum was an alcoholic and was addicted to prescription drugs. And also at the same time, half of the problem was the fact she wouldn't move from her bed because she was absolutely petrified of the doorbell going, because the doorbell could be knocking or ringing for somebody collecting money. And I know 100% what it was like. We were absolutely petrified to answer that door. My mother was petrified to get out of bed. And I don't want anybody to feel like that. And then I was reflecting back to what it was like living in a house where we couldn't afford to heat as well. And it was cold. You know, it was really cold. I was thinking about the kind of food that we had. We used to have like packet soup all the time. That was one of the things that we used to do because it would keep us warm and would you know, just give us, it was, well, cheap, basically. So I do know what it's like, and that is why it's so important that as a government we are trying to do our very best to help. But it's why, as a minister, I'm constantly reaching out to all the stakeholders and saying what more should we and could we be doing. So we have done lots of things. We have been making sure that we do ensure that energy is affordable for people. Last winter, you will know that we stepped in with a record £40 billion, which, when you think about it, is a massive amount of money and paid half of people's fuel bills. And also, that intervention made people £1,500 better off with their energy bill. But one of the things we're really focused on is the fact that we must never, ever get into that situation again, which is why one of the commitments we have as a department is to make sure that we head towards energy security. But first of all, one of the things we need to do is make sure that we have the financial guarantees. And one of the things you will know is that we've got the energy price guarantee, which is going until 2024 in March, and really important that we have that. Other things that we've done, and again, one of the things that I'm sure you're all familiar with here is the warm home discount. And we had a review of that. We did a consultation, and we actually were able to extend that to 3 million households, and they get £150 directly, which seems, which is a good way to get money into people's households. And also, as well as that, we have the cost of living payment of £900. So many things that we're doing from a financial point of view. The second thing that we've been doing is making sure that we're improving energy efficiency as well, and looking at making sure that heat does not leak out, and thinking about how we can support people to make sure they keep their heat in their household. And that's why we have the home upgrade grant, which is, I believe it's shortened to HUG, which seems quite appropriate. And the other thing that we're doing is we're supporting the social rented sector, where more than 30% of homes currently have an EPC below C. So there's lots of things that we are doing, but I just wanted to come on to one final thing before. I know we're probably going to have a few questions, but thinking about it's also a campaign that we're doing called It All Adds Up. And I recently went out with we were talking about how do we get messages into people's households. And it's been a challenge when we think about the vouchers that we've been trying to encourage people to have on prepayment meters. The households that are the hardest to reach are the ones like the household that I grew up in, because we really find it difficult to get into those households. And so we decided that we would go to my dad and do some filming. And it's worth a little look. I mean, we went out there. I've got Sam from my office, and we went and did some filming. And my dad, he lives in a council house. And we went along, and we were just looking at some things that could be done. And we were thinking about toning the radiators down, having a look, bleeding the radiators, looking at the boiler. Just some really simple tips that would help him keep warmer this winter. And it's really important that we do that. But the big thing as well for me that we don't do enough of is make sure that people get the right benefits. And that's one of the things that all of you can do here as well, is ensure that everybody is getting what they are entitled to. So I think my message really is that one of the things that you will know that I'm committed to is making sure that we support everybody who is vulnerable. I'm really keen on making sure that suppliers do all they can, make sure that we get customer service, making sure that we're really supporting people, and that we're understanding the challenges that people have today. I hope that you can see that we are listening about what needs doing. I think it's really important that we do that. So I'm very proud to be here today. I want to say a great big thank you to everything that all of you do. A great big thank you to you guys. You do an amazing work. Of course, there is more work that needs doing. Of course, we know that. But I am inspired when I meet people like you, and it inspires me to do the very, very best that I can and support all of those who are vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Take care. I'm not going to look Pam in the face because I think we're trying to steal a bit of time, and I know you have to go in a couple of minutes. So I kind of polled around for a couple of questions to put. We haven't really got time to go to the audience, and I guess what I picked up on was three things. Understanding that the package of support that folk wanted to see in the autumn statement wasn't there, and it's not going to be there. So what's available for us? And the three things that came out, I think, were, and pick whichever one of these you feel like kind of responding to. You're reviewing the fuel poverty strategy in England at the moment. How does that need to be different? I mean, what's the experience of the crisis that maybe says it needs to be something more than it was? Is the first thing that folk kind of mentioned. The second thing was, what else is there in the retail energy market space? So a lot of this is going to be mediated through the energy market. You've been persuasive and more than persuasive around the PPM issues. So what might be the next cab in the rank kind of there? And a lot of people in this audience will be delivering schemes. They'll be involved in warm home discount, they'll be involved in eco, involved in hugs. And how can we make those, better? If that's what we've got, if that's the toolkit, what can we do to make them more effective? So that was a really kind of selective, apologies, kind of straw poll of possible kind of questions.
Well, I'm turned on now. One of the things that I was doing is avidly writing some notes down in all of those, and lots of challenges within that. I think I said it, and one of the things that we need to make sure that we're doing is that everybody is getting everything that they're entitled to. And that it always strikes me, I mean, I use personal examples, but my father, as an example, he wasn't getting support that he needed. And he's 90 next year, and he's just now applying for some additional benefits that will help him, be able to move around and get support. So I think that's the first thing, because I think people don't always know where to go. I also think it's challenging that in terms of when we're communicating, people might not be able to read, as an example, or English might not be their first language. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do from a department point of view is get into people's households, and that's really difficult, Adam, to do that. So that's one of the first things. But also, a real challenge, and we see around suppliers that we need to do. And I have very regular meetings with suppliers. I have very regular meetings with Ofgem. And from an Ofgem point of view, it's making sure that they are doing the job that they're doing. So making sure as a regulator, they're ensuring that things like the prepayment meters, that abhorrent thing that happened, that doesn't happen. So really challenging and holding to account Ofgem. But also, as well as that, saying to the suppliers, is there more that you should and could be doing? And I know we probably have suppliers in the room, and you'll know that one of the things I'm saying and talking about is, when somebody picks up that phone, if they're doing that, if you're sat there for an hour, that isn't helpful because you're in a desperate state in any case. So that's not helpful. So can we do more on that? Thinking about, as you mentioned, around prepayment meters, is it fair that people pay more for a prepayment meter? Of course it isn't. And that's one of the things that we eradicated straight away. So we're very mindful of all of those things. And talking to people like yourself will ensure that we're doing all the right things. A long answer to a long question. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fantastic. So the last thing, around the fuel poverty strategy. So in England, look, there's people here from across the nations of the UK. So you've started the review kind of process. Have you got a sense about, so one of the things that I would say, and I think I have said, it almost needs to be beyond the department. It needs to pull in housing, local authorities, health. The extent to which it pulls them in is an open question, because you want it to be focused. But what's your feeling at the moment about kind of having those initial conversations where you think the gaps are?
Well, really important point, and I think we know the work that we did last year, And there are lots of things you could look at it and think, did we do absolutely 100% the right thing? The really important thing was to make it fast and efficient and making sure that everybody got the help they needed. And it was alarmingly expensive, billions of pounds invested. But what I'm wanting to do and think about is not just putting a plaster over the current situation. It's about thinking about what is a permanent, fit-for-purpose solution, which is one of the reasons why we work so closely together, one of the reasons why I reach out to so many stakeholders. But you make a really important point as well. It's around working across department, and so that we don't, we actually talk across political divides as well. One of the things I do is make sure that I reach out to other parties as well, because this isn't something that we can solve in isolation. So it's across all stakeholders, but also making sure we talk across departments. Because one of the things that, as an example, I'm really conscious of is around disability, additional cost that can have in a household. We're very aware of that, so I have regular meetings with Scope. And just thinking about those kind of things that we should be doing. So making sure that we're really trying to address that. And the big thing on my mind, and again, really happy to have any, not today, unfortunately, but debt. And it's the biggest thing, I think, that I'm concerned about at the moment. I mean, obviously making sure that we keep people warm this year. But debt is a massive problem, and especially with having paused some of the prepayment meters as well, we found that some people got into more debt as well. There are some people who just, there's a difference between people just who can't pay, and there's some people who won't pay. So massive challenges with not wanting to increase the burden and make it a broader scale in terms of people who can't afford their bills as well. So we're on it, but all ideas are very, very welcome.
And hopefully we'll garner some more ideas for the rest of the day. So, Minister, thank you very much. Amanda, I'll deliver you back into the capable hands of your team. So thank you very much for joining us today. And so the next session is looking at, on the front line, just kind of where we are with the energy crisis, what the impacts have been. So if I could ask the panellists to join me up. We've got Grace Brownfield, who's appearing via video link through a video, but Michelle O'Neill from NSPCC, Louise Rubin from Scope, and Ross Kane from the Fuel Bank Foundation, if you could come up. And I think we've got a little video to play in the meantime to welcome you onto the stage.
I have long-term ME. I have an underactive thyroid, so of course that classic symptom of that is that you're always cold. And I suffer with anxiety and depression. There's only me living in my home. Because I'm all electric, my water is heated on economy 7 on a big tank. And it has no timer or anything on it, so I literally only put it on probably every 3rd night. Can't remember the last time I used my big cooker. I now microwave my veg, which I hate, and literally turn everything off. The standing charge, I think, is absolutely crippling. Some kind of social tariff for people on very low incomes. Well, I think it would help massively, because I could have regular hot water, and that if it was particularly cold, I wouldn't have to think really hard as to heating my house, and particularly with storage heaters, I have to think like 24 hours ahead. And I didn't expect to be living my retirement thinking, well, it's warmer to go to bed.
My energy bills were quite high, and we were struggling. We had to have the heating all this, plus because I've got a disabled brother there, I have to care for him as well, make sure the house is more warmer for him. Because he's coming to an age where he's 57 now, and he feels the cold more. we had to have the heating on all the time. And the thing is, I only work 24 hours a week. I'm not earning as much as I used to do. And with the children being at home as well, it's not easy. My wife's, she's a cancer patient as well. She went through chemo and radiotherapy last 2 years ago. And she's still suffering off that as well. You know what I mean? She's still recovering. Got into a bit of debt because I had to pay some of my bills off with my credit card. I can't save any money. I've had stories from people that what they do is they sit in they don't put the heating on, just get a blanket and a hot water bottle and sit in that all day in their house. People prefer to stay at work because it's warmer there, because they've got the heating on, because they've got nobody to pay their bills, you know what I mean?
I got 3 kids, 9, 8 and 3 years old. In winter especially, I always use the heating, central heating. I always in that winter time or in rainy time, all water comes inside from my windows. So I was near to sell my home. I don't understand the bills. I feel like it's a second mortgage on me.
Beginning of this year, I got diagnosed with cancer. I have a muscle disorder where I can't control my body temperature at all, which means if I get cold, I can't warm up. It's like being inside an ice cube. Everything I've put aside, I've had to double. I'm panicking because obviously I've only got the heating on as little as possible because I'm scared to get cold, because the pain with the muscle disorder is unbearable. If my legs get cold, I can't walk properly. It's just me who lives in here. It's a bungalow. It's old doors at the front. The windows are supposed to be double glazed, but if they're double glazed, I can still hear people the other side of the road talking at the bus stop. So the 150 I was relying on, and I was thinking, oh great, I don't need to worry, I can have the heating on at the beginning of this year. All of a sudden it's like, I'm going to have to be careful, you know, contract's going to run out this year, what am I going to do? The government are turning their back on us with the prices of food and everything else going up. Because of the cancer, I'm supposed to be eating really healthily. I can't afford the foods, you know, let alone the heating side of things and the prices. All these little things are adding up. So I am going to get in debt. I'm going to end up with a credit card bill that's going to be horrific. Who's going to help me?
I have long-term ME. I have an underactive thyroid, so of course that classic symptom of that is that you're always cold. And I suffer with anxiety and depression.
We always mean to start these conferences with voices of people directly affected by the consequences of fuel poverty. I think it's my fault that we didn't play that when the minister was here. That probably would have been the right thing to do, but there we go. We'll try and make sure that she gets sight of it. But anyway, I'm delighted that we have people who are able to talk to the real life experience, actually not just of beneficiaries and service users, but also of organisations at the front line trying to cope with the situation. So I think first we've got Grace Brownfield for the Money Advice Trust. Grace has been on these conference kind of platforms many times before, unable to join us for a number of reasons, but I think we'll start with Grace's video, if that's okay.
It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to talk to you today, and I'm really sorry that I can't be there in person. I'm Grace Brownfield. I work in the policy team here at the Money Advice Trust. We're a debt advice charity, and we run National Debtline and Business Debtline, providing free debt advice over the phone and online. Last month, around 3 in 10 callers to our National Debtline service had energy arrears, and our advisors are really on the front line of helping people in energy debt. It won't come as much surprise to many of you when I say just how concerned we are about energy debt this winter and beyond. Many of you will be familiar with the Ofgem figures that show energy debt has hit a record high at £2.6 billion. And what's interesting when you look at that figure in more detail is that that's been driven by a particularly sharp rise this year in the amount owed in what Ofgem terms as energy arrears. So that's where someone is in debt to their supplier but doesn't have an arrangement in place to repay that. And that points to the challenges that households are facing. So many people in energy debt don't have any money to put towards their arrears because bills remain so high. And if you are struggling to pay your bill for your ongoing consumption, then it may be that your arrears are growing and growing. So we're particularly concerned about people who are trapped in energy debt this winter. Our own research found that 1 in 4 people with energy debt across the UK are currently unable to repay that. And while there's undoubtedly good practice out there, including in some of the winter support packages we're seeing from suppliers, we are also still seeing some poor practice when it comes to the treatment of people in energy debt. So our research found that 1/5 of people with energy arrears had been threatened with enforcement action by their supplier, despite telling them that they were struggling to pay. Now, fundamentally, this is an issue around affordability of bills. So like many of you, we want to see action from the government to introduce longer-term affordability measures like a social tariff. But we also need urgent help for people who are trapped in energy debt now. And that's why we, alongside National Energy Action and 15 other organisations, have been calling for a government-backed Help to Repay scheme. That would offer repayment matching and debt relief to people struggling to repay their energy arrears. Like many of you, we were disappointed not to see any action on energy support and longer-term affordability measures in the autumn statement, but we'll keep making the case for why this and why a Help to Repay scheme are desperately needed. If you'd like to find out more about our Help to Repay proposal, then you can visit moneyadvicetrust.org/help-to-repay. Thank you.
And that, of course, chimes with the Minister's point, which was quite interesting to hear, that focus on debt as possibly an action that they could help with. So now we go to Michelle O'Neill from NSPCC. We know you from your local work as well. I think for all of us, we recognise that the impact on children, kind of mental health and physical well-being, is just one of the most dramatic and heart-rending kind of impacts of the fuel poverty crisis. So, Michelle, would you mind? Thank you.
That is a big step. Thanks, Adam, and good morning, everyone. My name's Michelle O'Neill, and I'm a Development Support Officer at the Centre for Early Child Development, working on the Blackpool Better Start Partnership. It works. Blackpool Better Start is a 10-year programme that gives every new baby in Blackpool a better start in life. Led by the NSPCC and in partnership with our community, health service, local authority and voluntary sector, we work collaboratively to reduce pressures and build capabilities of parents. By changing the way professionals and the community work, we aim to mitigate the impact of early adversity, build resilience and improve outcomes for generations to come. This will be achieved by delivering a significant increase in the use of preventative approaches in pregnancy and the first 3 years of life. Exploring the extent to which poverty is an influence on child development outcomes is something that is extremely topical, given the rapidly rising rates of child poverty in the UK and the deeply uncertain economic environment that's facing so many families as we head towards another winter. There are 4.2 million children living in poverty in the UK today, and it is estimated that child poverty costs the UK £38 billion per year through reduced revenues and increased need for support services. But most importantly is the immediate cost to humans. And we know that with our work with children that they feel their parents' pressures acutely. Through their calls to Childline and discussions with our frontline practitioners, children and young people have shown that they're well aware of the financial strain on their parents and carers. Childline receives a call every 25 seconds, and when children reach out, our counsellors are there to listen and support. This last year, our Childline counsellors provided over 195,000 counselling sessions to children and young people. All areas of a child's life are adversely affected by poverty: home, school, friendships and more. Child poverty affects children's ability to enjoy their childhoods and achieve their aspirations. Lack of money can prevent families from providing the basic needs of their children, and the stress and financial insecurity can be overwhelming, affecting relationships, all of which put children at harm. The Institute of Health Visiting warns that a growing number of babies and young children are experiencing the effects of epidemic levels of poverty, and what is often under-acknowledged is the impact during the earlier stages of childhood, which is often the most severe and prolonged when experienced in the first 1,001 days. An all-party parliamentary group report has concluded that the situation is significantly worse for children living in the north of England. The pandemic and rising energy and living costs have contributed to widening inequalities in our society, leaving many families struggling to pay their bills and shop for food. Blackpool ranks as one of the most deprived areas in the UK. 9 of the 21 wards in Blackpool fall into the most deprived 10% nationally. Over 40% of children in Blackpool live in poverty. That's 12 children in a classroom of 30. Blackpool also has a chronic problem of poor quality housing. Families are struggling to afford to heat their home. Children who grow up in cold, damp and mouldy homes with inadequate ventilation have higher than average rates of respiratory infections and asthma, chronic ill health and disability. They are also more likely to experience depression, anxiety and slower physical growth and reduced cognitive development. Babies born in Blackpool live 10 years less than the national average, and not only will they live shorter lives, but they will also spend a smaller proportion of their lifespan in good health and without disability. Sensitive parenting and positive relationships can buffer the effects of the issues such as poverty, but increased levels of stress and pressure can also make parenting more challenging. It will be no surprise to anyone in this room that the need for support has grown over the last couple of years. Last year, a survey on professionals working in Blackpool found they were more worried about the impact of food and fuel poverty on the community than mental health, something that we'd never seen before. We also asked our families what they were struggling with and what areas they would like help and advice on. Gas and energy costs, food and keeping warm ranked the highest. They also told us that they wanted practical support, such as help filling out forms and help with money. Taking the learning and evidence from the surveys and working with our families, we developed a targeted response to the cost of living, focusing on prevention and early interventions. All of the Better Start programmes include the voices of our families and community members. They are the ones who drive and influence how they want to be engaged into local services and what support they need to raise their children. In summer 22, a new role was created in the Community Connector team, that's a lovely team there, called the Money Saving Connector, and it's to support local families with basic money saving tips and to give up-to-date information on benefit entitlements. This light touch peer-to-peer approach allows families to feel comfortable when talking about their financial situation, so the right support can be given at the right time. We have expanded the work to include a cost of living connector to support families to access regulated debt advice, energy saving schemes and signpost to warm hubs and welcoming spaces, helping families to overcome any barriers and challenges to accessing support. Through targeted support, we have helped families to complete applications to schemes such as a Healthy Start, and in a little over a year, Blackpool has increased uptake from 63% to 81%, which equates to at least £85,000 in benefit going back to our families and supporting good diet and nutrition for children. We've also developed universal save and play sessions in our family hubs. These free weekly sessions, led by the Better Start Early Years team, are strengths-based and encourage positive parenting interactions in an inclusive and relaxed environment. Somewhere that families can meet, get a drink and something to eat, and are supported by staff who are trauma-informed. The Cost of Living Connector is on hand to talk to families and can offer support such as registering for priority services, accessing funded places for nursery, discretionary and household support applications, and access to low-cost food. It's designed as a one-stop shop, single point of access for families to get the help and support they need, working to prevent families going into crisis and having the services and infrastructure in place to meet the most complex needs. Blackpool has an accessible approach to the cost of living and energy crisis called Blackpool Together. Led by the Director of Public Health, this partnership approach provides coordination across all sectors, including the NHS and the VC-FSE services in Blackpool. Supporting our future generation out of the cycle of poverty relies on a collaborative approach, and by working together we can shape strategic long-term plans that respond to local needs and deliver real and lasting change. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. A couple of years ago, I went to one of the events in Blackpool, and it was the biggest, most inspiring cross-service provision coming together of dynamism, and that's absolutely fantastic. There was a couple of things you said there that really kind of resonated. I love the idea of Better Start, the idea you have to, that it's about all those benefits, health, mental health, development, productivity, educational attainment, and I always think, you know, you're only as happy as your least happy child, and the infection that has across you is quite remarkable. So thank you very much. Next we have Louise Rubin from Scope. I think it's fair to say Scope are a big brand charity, and you've really added weight and power to the advocacy for immediate, urgent, and then long-lasting energy support. So it's been great to have you really front and centre of that challenge. Louise.
Good morning, everybody. This is a large room. I might just not look up for a while. I'm Louise Rubin. I'm Head of Policy and Campaigns at Scope. So if you're not familiar with Scope, we're a disability charity. We work across all conditions and impairments. And our interest in energy comes from the fact that lots of disabled people need to use more energy to manage their health and conditions. We've been working in this space for quite some time. We work with suppliers, encouraging them to put better practices in place. We offer direct support and advice to disabled people. And of course, where I come in and my team comes in is in influencing and trying to encourage the government to do better. So there are lots of reasons why we're interested in this area. We know that disabled people have been particularly badly affected by the crisis, and there are several reasons for that. It's partly because life already costs more if you're disabled, regardless of the crisis. It's expensive if you have to pay for taxis because you can't get on public transport, or if you have to pay double for insurance. It's expensive. So disabled people are starting from a place of disadvantage. But on top of that, lots of disabled people do have to consume more energy to manage their health. That might be because they have vital equipment around the home, equipment such as hoists or breathing apparatus, a whole range of equipment that needs to be charged and cannot be unplugged. And also we know that disabled people, as we've heard on some of the videos today, have to stay warm to manage their health. So we have been increasingly concerned over the last 2 years by what we've seen, and we've been very actively campaigning and influencing and trying to support disabled people. And I'm going to run you through a few of the themes that have emerged from the research we've done with thousands and thousands of disabled people and with suppliers themselves. So the first thing we now know is that disabled people are hit a lot harder than non-disabled people by the crisis. That's not just me or Scope saying that. That is confirmed by research from other organisations, Joseph Rowntree, WPI Economics, a whole range of organisations that have confirmed disabled people are really hit hard by this crisis. Our latest research, which we carried out in September of this year, we surveyed 1,000 disabled people and 1,000 non-disabled people, all weighted to make sure the samples were fair and even. And it does confirm, as I said, so across all of the questions that we asked, disabled people's experiences were worse. I won't run you through all of the stats. I expect I won't be invited back if I do that. But just to give you a flavour, when we asked whether people expected to be struggling financially this winter, double the number of disabled people said yes compared to non-disabled. When we asked about debt that people had got into over the last 12 months, again, double the number of disabled people now in debt to their suppliers compared to non-disabled. The next thing that's emerged quite clearly is that disabled people are facing impossible choices. We've heard a lot about that already this morning, and I'm sure none of us are surprised at all now. We've got used to hearing those horrific headlines around heating and eating. But actually it goes way beyond heating and eating, and what we hear about day in, day out on our helplines are choices such as Adam ran through this morning, people no longer showering or bathing or reducing it to once a fortnight, and feeling humiliated, feeling really upset and disgusted about the choice that they're having to make, not wanting to leave the house because they feel embarrassed and upset that they haven't been able to shower. People selling their possessions because they have to pay the bills. Worryingly, disabled people stopping engaging in health treatments or buying medicine that they need to stay well. And to kind of bring some of this to life, one quote that particularly stuck with me is from a lady who said, "My daughter has autism and ADHD, and it's hard to explain to her why we can't have things, why we can't go to places, why she can't go to her friend's birthday party because I can't afford the gift. The stress is killing me." And we hear so much about this that it almost stops going in after a while, but it's really important that we allow it to come in. And I wish the Minister was here to hear it, because behind all of these stats and headlines are, of course, real people. The third theme that we know about, and you'll be aware of too, is debt. Disabled people are building up debt. At Scope, we run something called the Disability Energy Support Service. It's essentially a helpline that we established almost 3 years ago. When we established it, it was actually supposed to help disabled people navigate making the switch to a different supplier or give them advice on how they can make their homes more efficient. But as you can imagine, the nature of the calls has changed dramatically over the last 2 years or 18 months. And now almost all of the calls we receive are from people that are fully aware of the efficiency programs, are fully aware of the schemes that are out there, but they just need help to pay their bills. That's what they're calling us for. So when we look at the stats, things are getting worse, not better. So if we compare November 22 to November 23, the average amount of debt that callers are in has gone up from just over £1,000 this time last year to £1,500 now. And the number of callers who are in debt has gone up too. So this time last year, about 41% of callers were in debt to their supplier. It's now closer to 50%. Another thing we've learned is that the response from suppliers is very mixed. As I said, we work directly with suppliers who want to know how they can improve the support they're offering. That's not just about schemes to reduce bills, but it's about making websites more accessible. It's about making sure customer care services understand disability and what their clients might need. So for accessibility, for example, some suppliers have really taken note of the advice that we've given. They've changed fonts on their websites. They've made sure websites work with screen readers. Others haven't. The attitudes of customer care is again very mixed. Even within one company, we hear wildly different experiences from customers. So somebody might have a really good experience and they might find that the person they spoke to was able to put a payment plan in place or really understood their disability. But within the same organisation, you may speak to someone who doesn't understand it and sort of makes you feel like a bit of a nuisance when you're trying to call and explain your disability. Digital exclusion is a huge issue for lots of the people that we speak to. Again, some suppliers understand this. Some are good at putting other schemes and ways of reaching out to people in place, but others are still making the assumption that everybody can use a chat box, everybody can navigate a website, and we know that it's not the case.
And frustration over smart meters, I think in the news again today, actually. So it's something we hear about regularly from the customers that phone our helpline. Smart meters are broken, people can't read them, they don't work with screen readers, and meters themselves often inaccessible. They may be too high, they may be too low for somebody in a wheelchair. They simply cannot read them. And we hear sometimes the advice from suppliers is to ask somebody to come into your home and read it for you, which to me seems wildly inappropriate given the world that we live in today, let's say. But it's worth saying that not all suppliers are bad, and we know that lots of suppliers are working with us and with other organisations to improve their practices. And the final thing that comes through loud and clear from our research is that disabled people feel government isn't doing enough. We've asked disabled people lots of times over the last 2 years what they think about the support from government. The Minister spoke well this morning about the different support that has been put in place, and credit where it's due. There, of course, has been financial support put in place, but the message that comes through time and time again from the disabled people we speak to is that it just doesn't touch the sides. Given the costs that they are facing, given the debts that they are in, it doesn't touch the sides. So when we asked in September last year whether disabled people felt the government was doing enough, 60% said nowhere near enough. When we asked again September this year, 64% said nowhere near enough. So there is a long way to go. For us, solutions should have looked like additional support this winter. We all now know very little support is coming. There were payments made specifically for disabled people in the summer of this year, £150 cost of living payment for disabled people, but there are no more payments coming. On top of that, of course, bills continue to go up, and the financial support that was in place last year is not here. So we were deeply disappointed not to have any financial support announced this year, and even more disappointed that the long-awaited consultation on social tariff is nowhere to be seen. We think a social tariff is essential if we're going to make real change in this space. We have been calling for a 50% reduction on the unit price for a specific group of people. It's those on low incomes, it's those who have access to disability benefits. And that last group are the group that's really overlooked at the moment. They have been removed from eligibility from the warm home discount, there are no further payments coming from them, and they don't qualify for means tested benefits. So we're deeply concerned about that group. I'll wrap up by giving you a quote that summarises why the social tariff is so important to disabled people. So somebody that we surveyed said to us, "A social tariff would mean to me that my quality of life could be much better. I'd be able to go on holiday, I'd be able to buy a wheelchair, I'd be able to pay for my medicine, I might be able to go to the cinema or eat out without going to a food bank. It would change my life." We will continue to call for a social tariff, whether it's this government or the next government that puts it in place remains to be seen. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. I mean, there's so much about that smart, enabled, data-rich, flexible, dynamic kind of market, and how we ensure through the rules that it works for everybody. So that's really good to hear. So last we have Ross Kane from Fuel Bank Foundation. What would we have done without the Fuel Bank Foundation? So I'm really grateful that you're here, and I'm particularly interested in the experiences that you've got really in the eye of the storm in direct provision for so many struggling households.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. My name's Ros. I am head of Fuel Bank. Candlelit, cosy nights. Make winter feel special, but not if they're your only form of heat and light. We support families across the UK who prepay for energy but cannot afford to top up. Some may have a prepayment meter for gas or electricity or both. Others must bulk buy fuel in advance, heating oil, coal, biomass and some bottled gas, because they aren't connected to the grid, because they have no other means of keeping the home warm. What unites both of these groups is that if they're unable to buy any more energy, the heat goes off, the light goes out. We define this situation as being fuel crisis. It's a term we developed about 8 years ago, but it's now widely adopted for this specific situation where the crisis is here and now. What worries us is the sheer number of people in the UK who are now defined as being in fuel poverty, and how this number has increased. How this number has increased in recent years. As a charity, we campaign and discuss with energy companies, the regulator, government, about what they can do to better address the drivers of fuel poverty. But we focus on fuel crisis support because it's an area that has for so long been completely blind to those who've never experienced it. Because with fuel crisis, the need is immediate. Households in fuel crisis have run out of money today to pay for the energy they need today. Sometimes that's something that is particularly unique to prepayment. And we include within this definition households who are managing to maintain their energy supply, but the means they do are risky or unsustainable. Doorstep loans being an obvious example. Gambling is a very big problem that we're seeing growing more and more and featuring more and more frequently in the stories of people who find themselves in this situation. And likewise, we're now hearing stories as well of people turning to sex work simply to find enough money to get by. And over the last 12 months alone, we have helped over 620,000 people. The fact that we've helped 1.1 million people since our launch shows how real the level of current crisis now is. 56% of the people who've been helped through Fuel Bank in the last 12 months. And very worryingly, and following on from something our earlier speakers have talked about, over 40% of those people were children. And whether they were supported with a crisis top-up of a prepayment meter or a tank of oil, or even received a heated throw as part of a pilot scheme we've been running, these people didn't simply self-select. They were households who were being supported elsewhere by a range of quality community-based initiatives with partners who were understanding their need, helping them with the wider problems, but identifying that crisis energy was needed now. Their need was validated, and so we know without doubt that people we helped were those in absolute need. We prioritise customer research and insight to guide and inform the services that we deliver and to highlight the very real issues that our client group face. Our annual fuel crises have always been, and as it says, annual, towards the end of the winter. But this year, as we've moved from summer into autumn, the stories we were hearing from across our network and from our clients made us take a step back and reevaluate. And we did an interim report quite recently, and the data you're seeing now is the outcome of that support. The level of desperate need that we are seeing matches nothing that we have ever encountered before, even allowing for the fact that we have an increasingly wide group of partners. The need is so desperate. We talk to Fuel Bank clients monthly. We have a structured research programme that allows us to identify a reality of life in the UK today for those in fuel crisis, and it allows us to identify early changes in issues and severity of issues that people are facing. Sometimes people talk about fuel crisis being something that can be avoided. A bit of savvy budgeting, a few cooking skills, cancelling a Netflix subscription, or, well, they don't really need the internet, do they? These are too simplistic to solve the problem of fuel crisis. For our clients, their situation can be intense and very complex. It's never a one-issue factor. And many report feeling worn down by life, feeling hopeless and helpless. As the cost of living crisis consumes and continues, debt levels rise, as we've heard. People's resilience is wearing down. It's paper thin for many, many of our clients. And we can see that impact trending downwards. You can almost envisage, if you think about it, the impending crises that follow behind. And one of the things that we hear about so much more since the pandemic is the mental health crisis. And its potential for getting much, much worse is high. And the other new thing that we're seeing is young people are desperately struggling. We're seeing a much greater increase in numbers under 35 who seek our help. And this is the group who is most likely to be in perpetual fuel crisis, as they're most likely to have children at home. Their outgoings often far exceed the money coming in, with many prepaying being a completely new concept when they bought their first home. We know that energy awareness, that managing energy bills for people for the first time can be challenging. Managing prepay is a lot more. And if we drill down into those younger fuel bank clients, we see the alarming picture of people running out of money to buy energy on a daily basis, and where a quarter were physically living without heat, light and power at the time that we stepped in. And for those who are familiar with prepayment, that will bring additional challenges. When the meter runs out, the amount owing on it continues to build. We're also continuing to hear more anecdotal evidence that some are using gambling to help pay for their energy and their wider living needs. With extreme stress, anxiety, addiction, and even suicidal feelings being strongly associated with gambling, this is something we need to sit up and take notice. Gambling is not a tool to navigate out of crisis. And in many cases, living without heat, light and food and essential clothing causes an almost unbearable strain on clients and their families' mental and physical health, sending them into a downward spiral. A full 60% of our clients this year have told us that receiving a fuel crisis top-up significantly improves their physical well-being. Yet, as the cost of living crisis continues, debt levels rise. People's resilience wears paper thin. And we can see that this impact is trending down from previous years. We and the people that we support are fighting against a much bigger problem today than we were in years gone by. And to one of the key and alarming conclusions from our research, one which needs immediate attention. 43% of the people we have supported with a critical need for energy had a critical need for energy. Think here about the very old, the very young, and the very poorly, as well as homes with stair lifts, bath hoists, nebulizers, and critical medicines which need to be kept in the fridge. Many clients talk to us about having a respiratory condition that is made worse by living in a cold, damp home, where it's fuel bank that is keeping their illness from further deterioration. And of the people we spoke to, 65% said the help we provided made a significant impact on their mental well-being. But again, we're seeing this trending down from when compared to previous years. And if you look at the decrease between February 22, 88%, to October 23, down to 65, it's a very significant downward trend. And the impact of this downward trend in previous years is the result of the prolonged pressure, stress and anxiety that build upon each other, and living on a negative budget despite doing without the essentials. As we approach this winter, we are seeing the situation where being in fuel crisis becomes a constant, overwhelming status to be in. 75% of our clients helped over the past few months talk about rationing heating, hot water at least once weekly over the last 12 months, with over half sharing that they have had to choose between food or energy at least weekly over the last 12 months. As it drags on, the cost of living crisis is becoming the accepted new norm. But for our client group, whose resilience started being eroded during the pandemic, the situation is now so severe it's unbearable, with little or no respite across the household budget, and being hardest hit by the sharpest price increases in many sectors. But it's critical to appreciate that 90-odd% of people who prepay like prepayment, primarily because it avoids receiving a bill that cannot be paid. And so it is essential to consider how changes can be made to deliver a step change in experience and affordability for those who do prepay for their energy. We have simply got to make sure that prepayment works better and better considers the needs of those who choose to repay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. It's always chilling when every demographic you could pick on is showing great signs, but some positive kind of ideas about the way in which the positive impact of the support would be. I think one of the things that I think everybody who's client-facing, and I think it came out in some of the questions that were asked for delegates before they came, was this preponderance growth in people with suicidal feelings, kind of, which is obviously unbelievably tough for the clients, but it's tough for the frontline staff as well. So I think what I'll do, there is lots of stuff that people will resonate, that people will recognise from their own organisation. So not just questions, we're really interested in other people's experiences with their own organisations that can back up and attest to the sorts of things we've heard today. So if people have those sorts of experiences they want to share, as well as ask questions to the panel, then please do kind of put your hands up. So think about that and get yourself ready. I'm assuming we've got roving mics and the like, although I can't quite see. Anyway, I'm sure we have. But I guess the thing in the context now for everybody is what you're planning for winter. The assumption is it's going to be hard. The packages of support we were hoping for aren't there. So all organisations are trying to anticipate what winter's going to be like for them, how you can make a difference either to your service delivery or your advocacy kind of positions. And I guess without looking for a counsel of despair is kind of what the top couple of issues that as an organisation you'll think you're going to have to do more or to do afresh this winter kind of would be. So kind of hands for people who want to share and kind of ask questions or give the experience from their own organisations. But in the absence of that, and it is an absence at the moment, can I come back and maybe start with you, Ross? Oh yes, you have to press the button.
So we've already started our crisis winter support. One of the things we've become very aware of over the last few years is the result of the rising energy prices. The fuel voucher doesn't last as long. We can't increase the face value of a fuel voucher because there are some meters that won't take more than £49 in one top-up. And that's something we're working on as a need to change. So we trialled, again at the end of the last winter, we had trialled providing a second voucher automatically. That has kicked off with December, so we calculate the amount of fuel people need for 7 days, and we provide, in effect, a top-up voucher a day or two after they receive the first one. So at least we know people are getting a day's worth of energy. We've obviously trained all our partners on the importance, if people are disconnected, to try and do something about the front screen debt to make sure the voucher lasts. But we're trying to make sure that at least it provides a reasonable period of time to give people that breathing space to action the advice they're receiving from partners elsewhere. The second thing we're doing, I touched on, we trialled a heated throw scheme in the late winter, early spring. We weren't sure, we really weren't sure. The feedback we've got has been startling. In fact, it happened, one of our own team, we had one in our office and it was cold that day, and she put it on and I got a message saying it's brilliant. And that's the feedback we're getting from our partners. It isn't like a huge heat source, it's like a warm hug, but it really makes a very significant difference. So we're rolling that out to a wider group this winter. We've been very fortunate with some major donors being very generous over the winter period, and we aim to spend as much of it as we can providing the support to get people through what is already looking like it's going to be a winter to remember, I think is what's going through my head at the moment.
Thank you. I was always resistant to the idea of as an advocacy organisation as well, saying people should have to resort to warming the person rather than the home, but that same experience with our winter warmth packs. You know, the need is desperate. It's not theoretical. Michelle, lots of interdisciplinary kind of activity you're involved in. Where are you seeing either the big challenge and the response that's needed?
In short, everywhere, really. I'll be honest with you, with our families, you know, we've had to change the way we've worked. In the presentation, I mentioned our Community Connector service, which is how we engage with our families. What we've seen with them, they're part-time, local kind of parents who have paid employment in Blackpool, and they increasingly have been, it's more family support, which is kind of not their role. So we've had to kind of upskill them a little bit more in the signposting. What we're finding is that more and more families and working families are coming to us for things like hygiene items, nappies. We've got a major issue at the moment, probably like most local authority areas, is with infant formula and the impact that has. You know, families are weakening down the formula to make it last, which then obviously has massive impacts on, you know, development, nutrition for children. Not changing the nappies as regularly as they would do because they can't afford. So what we're trying to do, and what we have done in Blackpool, is come together as like the Blackpool Together. So it's like the collaboration between our local authority, Director of Public Health, NHS, and looking at the services that we've got on offer and how we can maximise that, I suppose, and not duplicate some of the work. And you know, it's quite testing. We've got a lot of families who are really struggling, you know.
Yeah, so I'm going to come to Louise, but again, a reminder that experiences and colleagues from National Energy Action shouldn't be sitting on your hands. You're allowed to participate in these things as well, so which is code for no one else puts their hand up, put your hand up. So, Louise, you're in the advocacy side, but your organisation is in touch with the client group as well. How do you see the challenge for Scope and the Scope's response?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting the point that you made. Similar to you, I think within Scope there was initially some tension between the advocacy side of the organisation that I sit in and the kind of service providers. I think on my side we can be quite purist at times. This is for the government to sort out. If we start handing out electric blankets and the like, then it takes the pressure off the government. But we have climbed down from that position as the crisis has gone on, because as you said, the need is too great. So we, like yourselves, were fortunate enough to set up some partnerships with various suppliers who have made fuel vouchers available, who have made electric blankets and hot water bottles available, and they have gone like that. So as we prepare for this winter, we are skilling up more advisors for our helpline to deal with the influx of calls. We don't have the capacity that we wish we had. We get about 600, somewhere between 500 and 800 referrals every month, and we can't accept them all. So we're preparing by skilling up more advisors, by actively seeking out those partnerships with suppliers that are able to provide vouchers and the like to us. But as well as that, I think we're focused now on being more creative in how we get advice and support into the community. It's something that the Minister spoke about this morning. It's one of the rare areas that I agree with her on. We do have to be more creative there. So as a disability organisation, we need to walk the walk and talk the talk. So we are getting out from behind our desks and behind our virtual services as well, going out into the communities to actively reach those people who don't engage online.
And I think we'd be absolutely with you on that last one. I think we made that journey as well, from a kind of, not purism, but, you know, that you shouldn't have to be arguing for this stuff, to you've got to do what it takes to keep people warm. Lots of people forced back on the phones, pandemic and the sheer volume of stuff. You've got to get out to those people who don't present or who don't come forward. It's absolutely critical. So there's a light in my eye, which I'm sure is kind of shielding me from the thousands of hands that are going up. I know, but absolutely fantastic. The gentleman with a purple tie and he's spread his hands so he can be easily spotted. Thank you. Just say who you are and where you're from. Be helpful.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. It's Alex Wilkes from Yes Energy Solutions. Brilliant session. Really, really thought-provoking, and thank you. I suppose 2 points which might just, less of a question, more points that might stimulate some remarks is, well, I suppose I will say it as a question, what more can be done for us to align the availability of those crisis payments alongside some of the advice and the schemes where the payoff is longer term? Because that's a real challenge we're finding, is that it's the advisory services, for example, will offer, on average, we can save around £500 for a customer, but they are changes in behaviour, they take time, you know, knocking a few minutes off your shower time and so forth. It takes a while to pay off. And what we are finding is on the limited schemes where we have crisis funding, and fantastic, we have links through to FBF, which is fantastic, around 20% of people go deeper into the process and engage with more advice because we've tackled that point of crisis. And actually asking someone to engage in things which are going to have a longer term payoff when you're facing crisis is rather naive. So I suppose point one is, how can we better align those things, fix the crisis first and then earn their engagement, their willingness and so forth to carry on with us. And a second thing that I've discovered across our schemes is, because of that, call it stigma, embarrassment, whatever it is, people are happy with just any support, but will opt out pretty soon into the process because, well, I don't want to trouble you, that's enough for me. And it's how we as a sector get them to go deeper with us, because we talk about that. You can save about 500 quid if you do the behavioural, but actually if we assess you for home energy improvements and funding, the payoff takes longer to come through, but it's more of an enduring benefit for you. So I suppose it's linked to the first. How do we get crisis fixed or addressed or helped, but then hook people into the longer term benefit opportunities?
So I think that issue about hooking people in is really important. And anybody can answer it, but Ros, I was thinking, because you were able to show, I mean, not quite longitudinal kind of improvement for clients, but there was some felt positive benefit. Did that make it? I know that the organisation's model is quite simple. You know, you get the vouchers and you provide the support. But do you find that enables that conversation to happen? Because I think everyone's experience is, when you try to say, well, here are the long-term solutions, they come back and quite rightly they say, have you not heard what I've told you? Have you not heard the situation I'm in?
I think it's probably one of the most difficult challenges of moving out of this situation, because for our clients, and I suspect from yours as well, the here and now is so pressing, there isn't the space to think about going forward. And I was thinking as you were asking the question, there's so much stuff drops through the letterbox that, and people say, oh, I can do this for you. It builds barriers before you've had the chance to build that relationship that says one step at a time. And I think the reality is change is going to be hard, and it needs that building up of a step-by-step relationship. We talk about the fuel voucher being a breathing space in order to take next steps, and we provide a leaflet of sort of simple next steps. The principle of it was that you think about it as you feel better, but that's not always going to happen. So it really is about a relationship that says it's going to be simple steps, but it has to be consistent. And I think the real key is a relationship build up with somebody you trust. And if it's somebody you trust, you're going to listen and potentially take future steps. If it's we'll be back and somebody else from a call centre who you don't know, it's going to make it a lot harder to build that relationship that people will learn to trust and take future steps forward.
And I guess it's not just the future steps in terms of energy support provision, but no one comes with a single issue, do they? No one comes with a single kind of problem. It's how you can understand and then ensure that the system, once you're in the system, it provides those those greater benefits either.
I think for us in like Blackpool Better Start, we're all around like that behaviour change and looking at the theory of change model in what we do. And the most important thing is to get the voices of the community, ask our community, make sure that they're front and centre in the systems and the changes that are going to happen, because they're the ones who, like you said, need to be engaged into that, however that looks. We have something in Blackpool that we've created called Parents' Ideas Factory, and it's just a small pot of money, and what we do is we invite parents to kind of suggest things that they want. So it might be something like, I don't know, baby massage, for example, is quite a popular one always. But what we're seeing more and more of now is community groups wanting to run hygiene banks and, you know, more around in the cost of living. So we give them that sum of money to create those services. So you've got the community buy-in, and it's also affecting other community members as well. So just things like that. But yeah, you know, around that stigma and shame, what we developed, what we said before, the save and play sessions in Blackpool is universal. It's a universal offer, so people don't feel like they're being singled out for, you know, well, let's get everybody together and let's support you on the cost of living, and because you're in crisis. If we do it kind of universally, it feels a little bit better. But the support, the staff around that are all, you know, like I said, trauma-informed, trained, you know, just kind of trying to bring families out, because that's what we've struggled with as well, to be honest with you, is engaging, since the pandemic especially as well, getting the families back out into the community. That's, yeah, it's a challenge. It's $1 million question. Yeah,
that's really interesting, because you said theory of change, and sometimes you get completely captured in your theory of harm. It's quite difficult at the same time to think about the theory of change. I think Dion was at the back there, either for yourself or for somebody else. So.
Hi. It's not working. Oh. Hi, my name's Carol, and I work for the Croydon BME Forum. My role is to reach out to more marginalised members of the community who don't come forward for services normally. I offer one-to-one sessions, home visits, fortnightly webinars, and what I'm finding is the stories that I'm hearing of deprivation and people doing without, sitting in the cold, are actually eye-watering. And now that I'm getting these people to come out and come in, I'm doing workshops, I'm trying to re-educate, behaviour change, energy efficiency. I'm doing everything that I could possibly can, but what I'm finding now is I don't have much to offer apart from that, and people are expecting more. I did a session, and I'm thankful to the NEA for supporting me and sort of, you know, being there for me whenever I needed it, with a little bit of support and funding for some hoodies and stuff. And people have been truly grateful. I've had people who sit in the cold all day, elderly people especially, and they just don't turn the heating on. They can't afford to, and they're afraid to approach their suppliers. So for me, the question is, actually I did a session signing people up to the Priority Service Register, and once I signed them up, they said, what's next? What happens now? Because they actually thought that they would be a priority and their voice and their stories would be heard and listened to, you know, and acknowledged. And I feel powerless because I can't give anything else. So for me, it's to connect with these people. How are suppliers going to help with stories like these, you know, lived experiences? What can you do? How can you, you know, be inclusive and support people that are coming to me? And what support can I get? That's my questions today. And I hope there are people here today that will take these messages away and action it and actually do something to help the poor and the needy. You know, experiencing this fuel crisis.
Thanks, Carol. You do some great work in Croydon. I think one of the biggest kind of challenges that advice organisations, like the generic energy advice organisations, are one with specific kind of cohorts, is this thing about how you get active, proactive within communities, working with organisations within communities who may not have a huge amount of background in energy efficiency advice or energy debt advice, but have that invaluable commodity, which is they're present and they're trusted and they can talk to people, and you know people can recognise themselves in the package in the people that they are supporting, and that's all well and good. But we need to make sure that that support package, the offer, the toolkit, is extended so people are able to do it in those communities, because we all know there are lots of communities who are less present in the data banks of people who come forward to help from agencies, including from National Energy Action. I think it's a major issue for us and a big challenge for everybody in the whole kind of architecture of energy support. But I shouldn't be blathering on. It's not. I'm not here to do that. Does that resonate with anybody? Maybe Louise?
It does resonate, yeah. The feeling of being helpless and powerless does resonate, and it's really challenging, it's really upsetting for all of us. It doesn't sound to me like you are helpless and powerless, though. It sounds like you're doing some amazing work in the community. I think as a big charity like Scope, we recognise that we can't always get right into the communities in a way that perhaps more grassroots charities can. So there's something in partnership that's really, really important. As I said, we have been trying to be a bit more creative about how we reach different demographics, because we know we're not reaching them all. Sometimes that's about partnering up with suppliers. So we've done some work over the autumn where we've worked with a group of suppliers to get kind of our logo and their logo on the same pieces of paper, because we know that disabled people trust us essentially more than they trust their supplier. So if they receive a leaflet from their supplier that says, have you thought about doing this, that and the other, the reaction might be, well, you're just trying to get more money out of me. If it has our logo on it, they might trust it a bit more. So trying out those partnerships approaches has proved worthwhile, but equally doing that with smaller charities who are more present in particular communities is really important, because as I said, as a big charity, we know that there's a certain group that we reach and there are lots of other groups that we don't reach.
Yeah, that's dead right. There was a woman whose hand's now gone down. I think it's presumably because your hand was been up for such a long time that cramp was setting in.
There was a couple back here.
Okay, cool. But then, Dion, I'll trust you to go and find them.
I think there was a couple over here first. I think you were first. So is that okay?
Shall I carry on? My name's Rubin, Ray. I've joined National Energy Action from yesterday. So there we are. So really my question kind of in reference to Ross. Ross, you mentioned about a number of sex workers or individuals who are going into sex work due to energy crisis is going up. And I remember when I first gave debt advice in the East End of London, there's one person who really took me a while to get out of her how she earned her money once she lost her job from being a banker in Canary Wharf to having nothing, and she has a mortgage to pay. And she had to admit to me that, yes, I make my money now through sex work. So really, the question for Ross and others here is, now, in terms of numbers-wise, how much are we seeing number of sex workers or individuals going to sex workers in current times? And how, that's the second question, is can we utilize some of the extreme cases to raise awareness around a campaign? As I understand, National Energy Action and others are very much keen on raising awareness around fuel poverty through means of campaigns such as this.
Thank you, Rubin. I can't quite see that side of it. So if there's people asking questions, let's get a couple, and then we'll come back to it.
Yes, hello, I'm Emma from Rural Action Derbyshire. So we're a small regional charity, but we deal with rural fuel poverty. That's my thing. And I just wanted to say with Louise, I really liked the fact from the start that you resonated about disabled people being at a disadvantage from the get-go. It's more expensive to live if you're disabled. It's very similar in rural areas. It's more expensive to live. And Ros, when you talked about off-gas homes having to bulk buy heating oil and smokeless coal and LPG, it's something that people just can't afford £350 to buy 500 litres of heating oil. And then they've got no heating and no hot water and nowhere to go, because most of the support that's available is £49 to top up your prepayment meter, and most of these properties don't even have electricity on a prepayment meter, and they're in electricity debt, and so it goes on and on and on. Now, we do have a small fund to run an oil bank, and this winter we've already had more people apply to our oil bank than we did in the whole of the winter 2 years ago. And oil is more expensive now, so the money that we have doesn't go nearly as far. It's harder to get donations. People have got less money to donate, and a lot of corporates that might donate now doesn't fit with their green agenda, where they won't support anything that is around fossil fuel, so they can't donate to our oil bank. And with citizens' advice, or when they want to get debt advice, or are they getting all the benefits that they're entitled to, they're in crisis now. They can't wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks for an appointment with a debt advice agency. And we are finding some really desperate scenarios. Just last week, when it was so cold, people with ice on the insides of their windows and no way to heat their home, and it's just heartbreaking.
Thank you. Is there one more? And then we've got 5 minutes to... if there isn't, that's fine. Oh, yes, there is.
Mine was slightly more an insight piece, so I'll try and keep it speedy. It's Kat Renton from Octopus Energy. Actually, last winter we saw a lot of problems with phone calls that, as an energy supplier, you would not expect to have that conversation. Suicide, domestic abuse, the list goes on. In the spring, we recruited some social workers to try and unpick this within our business, to work out how we could connect local authorities, housing associations, suppliers, whoever needs to be connected to support these humans at the end of the line. We've actually found that the support was very useful for that reason, and also for our own team's mental health, the people who are answering these calls who joined the energy industry for other reasons. So we are now actually rolling that out and growing that part of our business, and we find that connection with other parties is incredibly helpful. So I guess if we were to turn that into a question, it would be, what else can we do collectively within this room to support people this winter through what we all know is going to be the worst winter in a very long time, if ever. Secondly, to those who are thinking about what's going on and how can they personally help, we do have a stand here, as do, I think, most energy suppliers. So I would encourage you to come and speak to us, and we can work collectively. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask people just to pick up any of the issues that particularly kind of resonate, but I'll make one observation, which is many people in this room or working for the organisations may have come in to do energy advice, to tell you how to switch, to tell you how to read a meter, to tell you how to do energy efficiency work. The character of the conversations, the character of the casework has changed beyond all recognition. The challenge, the difficulty, quite rightly, you have people who are angry and frustrated at you and find it difficult to talk about what the root cause is. And I think that's just something that we should, if I just say, we should recognise as something that for people who, it's not why they necessarily came into the organisations they came into, it just makes me just so kind of proud of the people at National Energy Action, but respectful for everybody else, energy suppliers, anyone on the front line who's found themselves over the past 2 years dealing with situations they never thought would be part and parcel of their role. So again, that's me blathering on when I shouldn't do. So if anybody wants to pick up any of those issues whilst a couple came to you.
Let me try and address this thorny issue that, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name already, the first speaker, Rose. We have
only just started seeing, well, only just recent, in relation to how long we've been going, very, very, very recently, I think that probably sex work is one of the hardest things for anybody to own up. I think it's become, since the pandemic, it's blamed for so much, but the impact on people's lives, jobs, incomes, we've not recovered from that. And I think since that is where people have found, been in a place where it's been an option that is there, but it's an option you do not want to own up to anybody that you do. I think gambling is probably easier because now it's being seen more and more. It's more of a debt problem than how I choose to live my life type of problem. And I think people are getting more open to that, and that's probably something that will be slightly easier to address. I mean, what we do specifically with our clients is we ask all of them at the point of being referred, one of the things we ask them is, would they be willing to be contacted to be an anonymous case study? Because that's probably the biggest way we can find people who are prepared to speak out, because that's the thing that will make a change. I mean, listening to the story you related, I bet we were collectively absolutely horrified that somebody can go from being in a good career to forced to work in the sex trade, and but it's a reality, more and more so, and it's probably an extreme that illustrates a whole range of things that people who were in really good professions now aren't. And it's about encouraging people to be able to share their stories anonymously, but share them to third parties who can use those to really scream and shout about the scale of this problem. And I think, potentially many of you go away thinking, oh, yeah, actually there's things we're hearing that we've not heard before. It's start to try and find a way to give them a voice through this means, because that's the key.
Thanks, Ross. Michelle, anything there kind of resonate with you out of those points?
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing more and more families struggling, and we know that there's a lot of families trying to get second and third jobs. I mean, Blackpool is notoriously renowned for, the bright lights, Blackpool Tower, illuminations, all the good things. But when you've got families that are living the streets behind the tower that can't afford to go onto the pleasure beach, or it's really difficult. So yeah, and they're turning to a lot of coping mechanisms, drug, alcohol abuse, gambling. We've got a big campaign at the moment around loan sharks, going to unregulated kind of, yeah. So it's not uncommon, and it's, we've got very transient kind of population in Blackpool. A lot of people coming in to the town who have had a great weekend there, a couple of years ago, and think it's fantastic, and then bring, their issues and problems as well. So it does stretch a lot of our services, and we can only do what we can do. And I think, we've got to be kind, haven't we? We've got to be kind to ourselves and to all of our colleagues at the end of the day.
Yeah, and those coastal towns, there's a lot of history with the housing, the standard of the housing and the private rented sector. So Louise.
Yeah, I think that the question around how to deal with some of those difficult calls really resonated with me. I've been on the receiving end of those calls as well, and if you're not trained to deal with it, it's horrible. It's deeply upsetting for you. You don't know how to help people. You can feel, quite upset about it. So it's really important that all of these customer care providers across different suppliers are getting the right training. Scope can help with that in terms of disability awareness. We can't help with everything, but certainly happy to have a chat with you about how to handle calls from disabled customers, how to understand the impact of different disabilities, but I think probably mental health awareness training is super important as well at the moment because of what you said about the suicidal nature of those calls. So yeah, I think you're right. People have gone into those jobs not expecting to take calls of that nature, and they are now, day in, day out, and we have to face up to that and make plans for that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. That was a great panel. And I said at the opening remarks we were going to have some hard conversations about the tough things that are going on, and we need to focus on the positive things as well. But can we have a round of applause for a marvellous panel? And then instructions from Danielle.
Thanks. Yeah, just second what Adam said there, an incredibly inspiring opening session of the conference, making me feel really proud of the work that we do, but also really frustrated, and I'm sure a lot of people will be sharing some of those feelings in the room about how we can do even more with less. I know from the work that we do at NEA, we hear time and time again some of those reflections around people coming to us and saying that they're not quite as vulnerable as the next person and not wanting that help, and that's a really, really challenging situation we keep finding ourselves in, but also some really positives. So hearing about things like the Parent Ideas Factory and other really great inspiring things. So on that note, we are collecting some information from you all to sort of reflect on tomorrow, but also to reach out and to build some of those connections that we have and strengthen some of those connections. So I'd really encourage you to share that work that you're doing and help us to connect in the room, in person as we'll do over the break in the session, but also using the Slido. So if you have a smartphone, I'm sure everyone's familiar with this with the day and age that we're in now, please do log on to that and share some of those insights, and we'll do our best to reach out and reflect on some of those in the session tomorrow. I'm going to echo as well that it is a real shame that the Minister was not in the room for all of that session, because I think there was so much that could have been taken away. Again, connecting it though, you've all been really, really brilliant on Twitter and sharing that via the Energy Crisis Conf hashtag. So please keep doing so, and that again allows us another way, a mechanism for sharing that back with colleagues in government and making sure that those messages and stories get to the Minister. I've been told to remind anybody who has any specific dietary requirements to find somebody at NEA. We'll be floating around the back room to let us know, and we can provide instructions on how to make sure that you get the food that you need. And without further ado, I'm going to let you all break for a short break. We will be back here at 11:45. Please do go and get some refreshments and enjoy the exhibition and speak to some colleagues who are working in the area. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.